Hey everybody, welcome to the Slick Tree Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Langford. The point of this show is to help improve ourselves as dogmen and to raise the quality of the dogs on the end of our lead. So let's settle in, turn the volume up, and let's see if we can't learn a trick or two together from our guests.
The thing of it is, when you inbreed, you take everything and you enhance it. So the good traits, you enhance those the same as you do the bad traits. It's the ability to be able to see if you're moving forward or if you're moving backwards. And there's even instances where there's been brother-sister crosses, full sibling crosses, and they produce outstanding dogs. But I don't think that is the norm. I think that is something that happens just occasionally, and that's why that I tend to think that line breeding is your best way to go. That stands true with both dogs and pigeons. A lot of times when you're breeding pigeons, you'll find that you'll produce two birds out of the same nest. One will be an outstanding flyer. He'll win you some money. The other one, not so much. But that one that don't, sometimes is the best reproducer. So, and the thing with racing homers is you can breed so many in such a short period of time where you can't do that with the dogs, so it takes longer. But that's my opinion on it,
I think that what he's talking about with the line breeding, that's what we've had our most success with. Look back at the dogs that we've got, they're all intertwined some way, whether it be the witch dog, the boon dog, the icon dog that he's got up there. All those dogs are in some form. They all go back to the Jam and Bow, Dixie Thrasher cross of dogs. And we've done that for probably 5 to 6 generations now. And I think what you get is you get a repeatable success, and you get a success that you have an expectation. You know what you expect those dogs to do at a certain time. And it also gives you a big edge in the fact that when you know what to expect out of that dog, you know what will get you the best results or what won't get results. Because even in a litter of puppies, what one does, like we talked about this morning, what one does and responds to, that other one may not. So the same stimulus won't make this pup do what this pup does. But if you've got a family of dogs or pigeons, anything that has been line bred, and you've done it for several generations, you get some repeatable expectations. So you know what to expect out of that dog at 6 months old or 8 months old or 10 months old, or when he starts to tree, or when he starts to run. We talked about these dogs being pretty junky when they start. They'll all tree early, but they all want to run. That's something that we expect. It's not something that's shocking to us or that we really give a lot of thought to. We move right on, let that young pup run, do what he's going to do, and when we have to start shutting him down, we do. But they always tree early, and you expect that out of them. So, it kind of gives you a lot better basis to start from.
Well, everybody, you are listening to the Slick Tree Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Langford, and today I am sitting here in Potosi, Missouri, and I have Big John and Little John Saunders here with me. Little John was nice enough to invite me over here to come do a little bit of hunting with him, and we made a couple drops this morning, got to see some really nice dog work. His witch dog's a really nice female. Pretty high-powered stuff.
Well, I appreciate it. We're glad that you got to come. You get to see these dogs on Facebook and hear people talk about them, and you have an expectation of them. But when you can come, especially like we did this morning, it's hot, it's windy, probably not ideal conditions, and get to see what those dogs do. when they're doing it and doing it in a pretty nice fashion here, come fall time, it really pays off. So we're glad to have you. You know, a lot of times we don't get to sit down and do these kind of things, especially face to face. So this kind of changes it, but we're glad to have you.
So didn't really plan a whole lot about exactly what we're going to talk about. I know you guys are both, which we sat around last night for quite a while talking, and you guys are just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to dogs. I mean, I'm sitting here in this cabin looking around, and there's deer heads on the wall. There's coons hanging around, turkeys, squirrels, pictures of dogs everywhere. Not just squirrel and coon dogs. I mean, there's pictures of all types of dogs in here. Really a cool place that you've built here. And just once again, really appreciate you guys inviting me and letting me come hang out. The racing pigeons is something that I'm very interested in. I keep a couple myself. I don't compete with them or anything, but just like to have them around. But I feel like there's a lot that could be learned from genetics on a scale where, like you said, you can reproduce them so much faster, and it's a lot cheaper and quicker turnaround both to be able to raise pigeons compared to dogs where you're looking at years to see what you've got compared to really almost weeks or months. And so I think there's a lot that can, like the little dog I brought up here to hunt, she's quarter English pointer, quarter mountain cur, and then half walker coming off both sides. And just thinking about potentially if I want to make some kind of cross in the future, that's kind of one of the things I'm thinking about is like what would be a good direction to go with that, because she's out of good lines of dogs on both sides, excellent dogs on both sides. But when it comes to genetics, just not blowing out the gene pool, like what would be a good breeding strategy to cross back over onto her eventually?
I know for that particular dog, and I've hunted with and judged both that dog's parents, her mother and her father. Both of those dogs come from a strong line of competitive squirrel dogs. If I was going to breed back at all on that dog, I would breed back into that. I'd line breed some way back into those dogs, possibly a half brother, something like that. Because what you got, if you like what you have, there's no need to try to reinvent the wheel, especially in the line of dogs you got, because it's repeatable. That didn't just happen. They took two very nice dogs and bred them and got expected results, like the dog that you've got. So in my opinion, if I was going to try to replicate that same dog, I would be looking for a half brother, a grandfather. I would not get very far out of that genetic pool, one side or the other. The good thing about your situation is they're two different families of dogs. So you have to figure out which side you want to try to follow. You know, do you want to try to follow the China side of that or the Messiah side of that? Because they're two different. They're very successful competition dogs, but they're two different breeds of dogs. You know, you got one with some bird dog influence and one with a lot more hound influence. For me, myself, and we spoke about this today. I think he'll say the same thing. We always lean more towards the hound side. But we came from that era. Like we talked about last night, you know, if you step back 25 years and try to compare the tree dogs then to the dogs we have now, there is no comparison to the tree style and the tree power. You know, dogs just didn't do what they do now. So you've got this new group of dogs that are good tree dogs. So it changes the way that you can do it. So you can breed this bird dog influence in and still keep your dog as a nice tree dog. You know, if you go back 25 years ago, you had to search the world over to find a young dog that would go in there and get hooked and bark 80, 90 barks a minute. They just weren't there. Had to breed that hound into them. So I think we base everything around that Walker dog side. Like we talked about last night, I think for us, that was when things really started to change and become repeatable, was when we made the Walker dog crosses. We had some dogs that were nice dogs, but when we got the ability to breed to Flat Rock Thrasher, that changed what we did, and we're still hunting dogs 5 to 6 generations that we can trace back very, very close to that same group of dogs. So
I would add, going back to your question, I ask myself when I think about breeding, what do I want to improve on. I don't look necessarily to an outcross, but at some point, if you have a family of dogs for enough generations, at some point you're going to have to outcross. And that's when I would be asking myself, like, okay, do I want a dog? Do I want to try to produce a dog with faster ground speed? Do I want a harder tree dog? Do I want a louder mouth? That at that point in time is when I would be looking for a dog that would add that to the equation. Now, keep in mind, they're not all going to take after one parent or the other. Just because you breed to a real loudmouth dog don't mean all your puppies are going to be that way. But you have to move in that direction, breeding is, even with all the research, breeding is still a chanced situation. But I will tell you this, for those that say, oh, I don't care about the papers, they don't tree nothing, it sure helps your chances of getting something that'll tree.
Yes. Well, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I can remember back when, and it's not an oddity now, but when they first started promoting an all-grand pedigree on a walker dog, that was phenomenal. Nobody did that. And I can remember people that were doing that. They were at the forefront of that. And that made sense. And like you said, for the people that make that statement, well, if that's what you believe, we'll go ahead. But for me, that it's repeatable. You'll hear us say that a ton of times. You're looking for repeatability in what you're doing. And it's so hard to get that unless you've got some kind of foundational line breeding to cross from, I think. There are some super outcrosses. You see these dogs pop up that are out of an outcross that are phenomenal. And when they hit, some of those are good reproducers. But I think for us, we've had great luck with the line breeding side of it. I'm a big maternal side on things. We talked about these females. I try to keep females predominantly and have for 30 years because I think that gives you so much more of an option. You can take the best stud dog in the nation and you're still at the will of whoever's going to come and breed to your stud dog until you get to that top tier, where he's a top tier stud dog. You take that female, you can take a nice female that's a winner, and you can haul her and breed her to the best dogs in the nation. And do that enough times that you can kind of start to build you something out of. I just don't think on the male dog side that you have that same opportunity. Mm-hmm. And now with DNA like it is, through NSD, PKC's the same way. You can breed to 2 sires. Well, that's changed the game for everybody. Because you're essentially you're taking this puppy that's like a lottery ticket that you can't scratch for a year. You hope he can do something. Well, if you've got a spot and you can keep one from each of those, that speeds you up one full year, which is huge in the dog world. That's why when you compare it to the pigeons, you can see your success or your failure so much quicker in the birds than you can with these dogs. And a huge part of that is if you have a female that has a huge litter of puppies and you sell those puppies, that's all subject to where those pups go. The success is in the people that are putting the boot leather behind them pups. You can take the best puppy in the nation. If he's sitting in the kennel, he does not get that opportunity. So that makes that makes a huge part of the successful end of it too, where those dogs go. We try super hard to place these puppies in those spots where they're going to get the best opportunity. That's huge too. If they don't get the chance, they never get to come to the top.
I think that a lot of people want to be a dog breeder. I'm not a dog breeder. We don't breed dogs to sell. We breed dogs to improve from where we're at. So when we do have a litter of puppies, it's because we're trying to better what we've got. Now the other puppies we place somewhere else and give them the best opportunity to succeed. But in general, I think there's way too many puppies bred out there, And it's not to say that some of them aren't high quality. It's just they don't get to the right people. And, the thing of it is, there's people who are good at starting a pup. There's people who are good at getting that pup ready to go to the hunts. And then there's handlers. And I don't think that there's very few people. I'm certainly not. I'm not all three of those. It's not that I haven't done all three stages, but I'm better at starting a puppy than I am on the other end. Because as it gets to the other end, it gets a little boring for me. Mm-hmm. When he's consistently doing what he's bred to do, at that point I'm looking for the next best thing. That's when he needs to be with a handler that's good at what he does. And that's kind of how I've evolved over the years. But getting back to what he was saying earlier, obviously a puppy has to get into the right hands. On the other side of that coin, you can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. If it's not there to begin with, I don't care what you do to it. I think that at least for me, what I have tried to get better at over the years is being able to recognize those that have something and those that don't. And you spend way too much time on those that don't when you could have had another one and already caught that one and moved on. Now, that being said, there's going to be people that say, well, he wasn't any good till he was 3 years old, Well, that's why they make different colored cars, because everybody don't like the same thing. I expect a puppy to be showing me something early on. Now, they're not all going to reach the level that I'm looking for at the same time. But on the other hand, if that puppy's not showing me something that's going to keep me interested in him at 12 months old, he's probably not going to stay here.
Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that dog won't suit somebody else. We kind of talked about this, while we were hunting there today. I'm looking for a dog that starts super quick, and you hear both sides of that. I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't like a dog that starts that quick. They burn out." We've not had that experience. I think so much of that is you can only put so much pressure on that pup. That pup's no different than a kid playing ball. If he's playing Little League, you can't put him with the high school kids. He can't physically take it. He can't take that pressure. So I think that a lot of these pups that start off, because I've heard people say, oh, he just never got any better than he was. People try to put too much pressure on that pup. He can only take so much, and then he goes to going backwards. You got to watch that as a dog man, if you want to refer to it as that. You got to watch that and know how much pressure you can put on that pup. Make every situation that he's got successful. Stop him when he's successful, and move forward with that. I think what happens so many times is you got a hot shot young dog that's 9 months old. First thing you want to do is show him to everybody. When you do that, that dog's been by himself. He's got to operate by himself. You put him in with this other group of dogs, and the wheels come off. And then people start to say, well, he's backsliding. You put him in a situation that he's not able to overcome in a positive way. It's like climbing a ladder with these young dogs. I think that, so for us, the early starting, that's something that I've got to have in one. And we try to, I may take a young dog and he make one good tree. It might be the best day that we've had in a couple of weeks. If he makes one good tree and I can knock that squirrel out and everything's just right, I'm probably going to put him back in the truck. In years gone by, I would have pushed. I'd have pushed and we'd have tried to get one more, get two more, get four more. And then your results start to go backwards on him because he's young, he can't take it, So I think that's a big part of this. You hear these guys talk about these dogs burning out. I don't necessarily, for us, that's not been our experience. You have to watch him, put him in the right situations. But if he's not doing something pretty quick, I'm looking to do something different, to move on to the next one. Not to say that dog may not make, but I think great dogs start off as great puppies. It's not ever been my experience that there's some that come on later that go on and make, but they're not going to do that here. We're just not going to give them. We're not going to give them that opportunity. We're looking to move something else in here and see if they've got it. I think good starts off good.
Well, it makes me think of I heard someone say this one time. The guy on the other end of that lead has got to be smart enough to know when to back off that dog. And when I think of like early starting dogs, it makes me think of like baseball. I mean, I don't know this, but I assume that Nolan Ryan was probably a heck of a pitcher when he was 10 years old. It ain't likely that he wasn't worth a darn and he got that good. And I think it's the same thing with these dogs. The good ones stand out. And as far as burning them out, if they do, I attribute that to the guy on the other end of that lead. You got to know when to back off of him and when to push him a little bit more. The ideal is to bring him to a point to where you've got everything he's got to give, and you got to look at the family of dogs that you're hunting, the characteristics that come with that family. Obviously, if you got dogs that come from more track type dogs, they're not going to probably tree as quickly as some of these others. We're looking for a balanced dog too. A dog that's not balanced is he's not of a lot of use to me. He may be a fantastic tree dog, but he's got to get that game to the tree. And then there's those that can just flat run a track, but they don't want to look up. We don't waste no time with dogs like that. It don't take me very long to figure out if I'm going to mess with him or not. And like I say, the ones that show something early on, they excite you. They make you want to hunt them. They make you want to take them back to the woods, and they're not going to ever learn anything if they don't get exposure. Now, with little puppies, I think that's the time to socialize them. I think that's the time to start teaching them some basic commands. It's not like that they have to know a bunch of commands, but they need to be where you can handle them. They need to know how to load. They need to be socialized. Because if they're not, any of these bad traits that come with them, with that family of dogs, it's going to expose itself at some point, and it'll be at the most inopportune time when it does, usually.
Well, I think so many times you take a puppy that's been in the pen 7-8 months old. It gets to be a good cool morning. Whoever's got him thinks I'm going to take him to the woods. And we talked about this very situation this morning. You take a puppy that's 7-8 months old. He's not ever been on a lead. He's never been broke to lead. He's never been in the box. He's never been shot around. You stuff him in the box. He's sick to his belly. Little fella's just sick as he can be. You get him out. Then when you get treed, or the other dogs are treating you, take him, you tie him up. He flips and he flops and he turns, and then you shoot this 12 gauge over him. And you wonder why your results were bad. I think there's so many of these things. Like I said earlier, it's kind of like climbing a ladder. If you don't start at the bottom and put those steps in, your success is not going to be that good. Now, there are those few dogs that can overcome adversity. Doesn't matter who's messing with them, but they're few and far between. So I think you got to set that dog up. You got to start grooming him for his first trip to the woods.
They've also got to be trainable. And what I mean by that is they have to be able to take some of the pressure that comes with training. A dog that's too soft won't ever reach that highest level of competition because it just can't take it psychologically. And that doesn't mean they're not good dogs for someone to pleasure hunt. They're just not that type of dog. And like I say, a lot of these characteristics, they come with these different lines. So that's how important it is that you choose wisely when you buy a puppy. The cheapest puppy isn't always the best puppy.
I think what you just said makes a lot of sense, and it needs to be talked about. When you talk about pressure, when you talk about pressure in a tree dog, people think you're talking about tree pressure. How much tree pressure can he take? That's just one form of pressure. And for me, that's probably one of the last things, because you've got to have all these other things that he can overcome first. If that dog can't haul in that box, live in that box, sometimes we're starting on Friday, and you may finish your last round Saturday, and hunt several rounds in a day. If you've got a dog that cannot rest in that box, eat in that box, get out and stool out like he needs to, that's a different kind of pressure. Then you dump him with strange dogs in a cast situation, and your pressure amps up huge. Some of them can take it and some of them can't. Like he said, there's some that are very, very nice pleasure dogs that when you put them in that situation, they come apart because they can't take the pressure. And you'll hear us say that a ton about pressure, and I think there's so much of it, even with those puppies. There's so much pressure you can put on him. And then that builds all the way up to what we call taking tree pressure, But you've got to have all these other steps in place before you can get to that point. We try to figure out pretty quickly if he can haul. That's huge. If I haul him 8 hours somewhere and he comes out and it's upset him, he's not going to give you 110%. He might perform decent, and he may even get in there and tree a coon or a squirrel, either one. But he's not giving you everything that he's got like he did at the house. So we're trying to figure out how to speed the process up so that you can find this special young dog and move forward with him. I think now, we'd mentioned this yesterday in our talking, there's so many good dogs now, it's completely different than it ever has been. Your chances of getting a nice puppy are way, way higher. There's so many good dogs. I still think that there are a few great dogs. Good and great, there's a lot of good dogs that you'll run into. But I think if a guy has 2 or 3 great dogs throughout his whole life, you've probably been pretty blessed. Because for me, there's a huge difference in good and great.
Something that Big John, that you mentioned was that you're looking for a balanced dog, and like with Witch, that's something you commented on that, Little John. Like whenever I first showed up and she came out of her kennel and was just standing there the whole time when she's in the dog box and she's sitting there and you're getting the other dog in and out. I mean, she's just sitting there like cool as a cucumber, just acting. I think the comment you made was you think looking at that dog, she's just the laziest thing in the world while she's sitting there. I mean, not excitable and just chill.
Yes.
Is that something that you guys, so whenever you have a litter of puppies, knowing that you're looking for that kind of balanced and being, because a lot of dogs that hunt like they're high strung, live like they're high strung as far as what I've seen. So is that something whenever you guys have a litter, is that something you're kind of doing like litter checking basically? Yes. to select specifically for those dogs that just seem chill?
Yes, we take and spend a lot of time. We've got a litter of pups here out of Witch and Spike that are 13 weeks old. I can't tell you the amount of time that we've stood and watched those puppies from the time they were born to the time that we went to sending those dogs off, and watching personalities and how things do. I may take a puppy at 6 weeks old and take that pup and separate it from the other puppies and put it in a crate over here and just see what its reaction is. See what it can take, how much pressure it can take. Even at that young of an age, because you can see little things start to pop up in them. The dog that I kept out of the Witch Spike cross, it's very much like its mother. It's a really laid back kind of pup. We had a couple, and this is kind of an experimental thing. We had a couple that weren't. There's a couple of those puppies that are wide open. So for us, yes, we do. We do try to. I'm looking for that dog that can travel, just like you saw there with Witch. We're collaring dogs up. She's in there asleep. that dog will rest good. And there's a lot of them now that do that same thing. The dog that we bred to, that was a big reason why I chose that particular dog. That dog won with a lot of different, this is another thing that's very important to us. This dog won with a lot of different handlers. I think the dog's won 4 world titles with 4 different handlers. That's huge. That dog's going to come out and give you everything he's got, doesn't matter who's on the end of that lead or where you drop him at, which state. So that's what we're trying to do, and we made a big outcross here. But that's what we're trying to do is make that part of our success, because I think it's a huge part of it. If you've got one and you've saw puppies that are so nervous that they never rest, well, you do that over 3 days, he's tired, he's gutted. He's not going to have the same advantage that the other dog does. That's ate good, that's stooled out good, and it's fresh.
Makes me think of some years back, we were at Autumn Oaks, and they had a stud barn. And these people would bring their stud dogs, and they would display them. You know, they'd have their banners up and all that, and they were displaying them. And there was hundreds of people walking through this building. And the Thrasher dog had some age on him by then. He was laying over there, and there, like I said, there were hundreds of people passing by, and the dog just laid there calmly. And so here come Steve Yant, and he walked up and started talking and was standing there by that rail, and that dog heard his voice. Now, he hadn't seen that dog in like 5 years. That dog heard his voice, and the dog got up, walked across there slowly, reared up on that rail, and he petted that dog. That dog knew him, and that was something that I noticed about Thrasher. Thrasher was smart. He was smart enough that he knew how to make the best of the situation that he was put in. But, you know, going back to a balanced dog, intelligence is very important to me. A dog that is nasty in the pen, that never stops, he's not much good to me. Now, I realize there's people who have them that, you know, they're spinning circles. And if they do go with them, more power to them. But I got to live with that dog. And if I don't enjoy the dog, I'm not going to hunt the dog as much as I would. So, you know, it's like the old saying goes, you can't fix stupid. If you got a dumb one, he's always going to be dumb.
I tell you, I think that if you go back, you know, we keep talking about going back 25 years because it was so different. You know, back then you had to breed for strictly tree power because dogs didn't tree like they do now. Now it's kind of evolved to a point that to get a dog to tree is not an issue anymore. A lot of dogs tree. Now you're trying to fix these other things. Like he said, you know, for me now, if you ask me what I think sets a dog apart, it's heart and brains. He's got to have heart because all of them tree now. That you just don't hardly ever worry about a dog not treeing. That heart, ground speed, that ability to push one more time. And I think when you look at the heart and then you take the brain side of that, you take a dog, and we've all seen dogs that just get themselves treed quick, whether it be in the daytime with a squirrel or at nighttime with a coon, and they got that game. Those dogs didn't just luck out into doing that. They're smart enough to know where to put themselves, a hound especially. In this part of the country, it's rough. A dog may be in there 30, 45 minutes before he gets struck. He may be a half a mile from you before he gets struck. One that knows how to find a coon will find a coon. It doesn't matter where you drop him. A squirrel dog that knows how to find a squirrel will go and do that. They've got to have brains to do that. And I think when you take and get this magical combination of heart and desire and brains and one that wants to tree and perform, well, then you got it. But like I say, it's changed so much. You know, 25 years ago, we had to breed strictly to try to get a tree dog, especially in the cur dog side of things. I mean, they just didn't. You'll hear people say, old Tig, he treed, and, you know, he'd leave him all night. Well, I'm not saying that there wasn't a few of them. But as a whole, by and large, there was not a lot of dogs that had tree power, especially the tree power that we have now. So it changes the way that you breed. We don't have to worry about those things now. Now we're looking to clean this up on the other end with the heart, the desire. Foot speed is huge. Now if you're talking about a 90-minute cast or even more, a 60-minute cast, if you've got a dog that's got that extra foot speed, the ability to recut, I think that wins. That will aid in winning more than any other thing that's out there, because we've set these competition hunts up now to where you got to have that. Got to have a dog that recuts, gets hooked, and does it fast. So it's changed, and it's changed the way that we breed dogs. He was talking about Thrasher. We bred the Thrasher back when it was hard to get somebody to breed especially a nice walker dog like he was, to a cur dog. They just didn't do it. It was looked down upon. Now, fast forward 30 years, and that's all changed. But so is the way that you have to breed dogs. And I think that there's an evolution to this thing. If you don't evolve with it, because they're definitely not what they were 25 years ago. You got a different animal that you're trying to tweak and make it where it can perform at its highest level.
Well, people breed dogs to suit the registry rules that they're hunting under. I can remember when UKC went from 100 tree points to 125 tree points. That changed everything. Then here comes a dog like Rat Attack. Well, they went through a whole period of dogs that were hard tree dogs, but they weren't accurate tree dogs. And I attribute that to the fact that UKC had changed the points. Then it's got to the point now to where that's no longer the case, and you have a lot of dogs that will tree early, and are good hard tree dogs. They can still take a track and put game on the end of it. So there's been a lot of change over the last 50 years, and I'm hoping that there will still be those improvements over the next 50 years. At this point in time, like I said, we're looking for a real balanced dog, a dog that's got all the tools he needs to compete at the highest levels. Fortunately, with the way that people communicate now, with social media and all the resources available, you can breed dogs today to a dog in another state real easily. 50 years ago, you were limited. You either had to put a dog in a truck and haul it out of state, which a lot of people didn't do, or you bred to something more local. So that's all changed, and it's made for the better. You can have semen shipped to you from anywhere, and like I was saying, years ago that stuff wasn't even thought of. So it's changed, and it's a lot more exciting now. I think that people will say, well, do you think the dogs of yesterday were better dogs? I can think of a few that I just really hold in high regard. But as a whole, I would say that the dogs are better today than they were 50 years ago.
I think there's no doubt about it, especially in the breeding side of it. You would go through so many puppies trying to get one to tree. But I think the style of dogs has changed so much. And like he had said, the way that we hunt now, I've had people say before, what do you think was the biggest change? In my opinion, I got to come along at a time when way before Garmin's, so I got to see this evolution. But in my opinion, these Garmin's like we have now, that changed our whole game. Back years ago, you packed that ATS or that wildlife on your back, and you had to call a timeout. Nobody had those out where you could track your dogs. And I understand that helps with the safety of these dogs. There's dogs that people have give $50,000, some of them $100,000 for. So it adds in the safety, but it changed everything, because now you can look on your Garmin, see where that dog is, what he's doing all the time. So it has help to aid in the dogs. Years ago, dogs didn't blow in the country like they do now. They didn't stay split. When you got to a tree, especially at a night hunt, there'd be 4 dogs on a tree. Now everything busts like a covey of quail. And we've got tracking systems that we use all the time during that hunt, so we can always bust that distance. If he's 1,000, we say, Judge, he's 1,000. If you can't hear no dogs, you move 500 and keep it in the middle ground. So it aids in breeding a dog that gets super deep. And that's what we've got now in these hour-long hunts. If you've got a dog that blows through the country and gets treed, and he's got a coon, he's successful. In years gone by, if you had that same dog and you put him in a UKC hunt and you couldn't get your tracker out unless you called a timeout, he would not work for you. So the success changed as the technology did. And I mean, I absolutely love the technology that we have. It's great. I mean, it's aided in our training. You can take and pressure proof these dogs and do things that you could never have done without the aid of that Garmin. But there's a downside to it. And I think that the downside is it's changed the style of dogs that we have. Now, we're looking for one that blows that country open because that's what it takes to win. But we as dog breeders changed, like you'd said earlier, to adapt to these rules to have a dog that suited that. So we've essentially made this dog, along with the aid of this Garmin and these hour-long hunts, we've made those dogs that blow through the country and get treated like that.
See, now, whatever dog that I'm hunting in competition, I'm also pleasure hunting through the week. And as far as a dog that blows out of the country, I prefer a dog that goes as far as he has to go. If he can tree game around me, that suits the heck out of me. I'm not saying that there aren't instances when that dog in there a half a mile tree wins the cast. But I can also think of times when I can take a dog, a good one, and I'll tree 2 coons going to you. So I think you have to ask yourself, what style dog do I want to hunt? You know,
what game do you want to play?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the one that blows in there a mile before he starts looking, and it depends too on the game and the area that you're in. If I'm in thick game, I'm going to clean your clock with a dog that don't leave like that. Mm-hmm. Now, if game's sparse and the dog has to go in there that far, you're probably going to win tonight. But like I said, I hunt them through the week, so I want a dog that I can take home.
I think on the squirrel dog side of it, and you see it in these later rounds and these bigger events, squirrel hunting has evolved so much too. Used to it was a 2-hour hunt. You had one round. It was the highest scoring dog. There was no eliminations. So it was completely different. Now you've got these elimination style hunts, and that's what we hunt. So you've got a dog that you're hunting in the morning when conditions are great. Then you hunt, you win and you advance to that midday round. It's tough. A lot of times these are held in rough times of the year. So you better have one then that can blow in that country and get treed. We've all heard of dogs that people say, boy, he does really, really well in the first round, but he just the late rounds, he just doesn't do as good. We're looking for that balanced dog that can win every time you cut him. Going to get in there and get treed. He's got to get treed somewhere. And I know there's the whole blowing in there and circle points, and I get all of it. But he's got to get on the card. I don't care whether it's snowing or a tornado or whatever's happening. They got to get on that card. So you have to ask yourself, which part of it do you want? There are people that would not care anything about having a dog like that I'm looking for to blow through that country and get treed because they want one to tree around them. But that's not what you have to have in the game that we play as far as the competition side. And that's ultimately what we're breeding for all the time. Yeah, we do pleasure hunt. We pleasure hunt a lot. But we're looking for one that's balanced enough that you can kill game too. You hear a lot of people say, well, I don't kill a lot of squirrels. I kill a lot of squirrels. When they're here, we kill a bunch of them. Now, I don't think you can do that to each and every dog. It is problematic with some of them. And depending on what stage we're at, we may not be killing a lot of squirrels with that dog, especially if you got one you're trying to competition hunt. Because if you've killed 500 squirrels to him and never let him off a tree, take him to that first one, let that squirrel timber out and try to pull him off there and recut him. His mind's blown. And you may have the best dog there, but he didn't have the work done on the front end to get him ready for that. So a lot of pressure a dog's got to have. In order for one to be successful at this, they got to be pretty well-rounded.
I think about, you hear people talk about, they'll take a dog when it's starting, and the dog won't leave. And I still am, I've still got mixed feelings on how best to handle that. I mean, you hear them say, well, take him out there and walk him out there and just sit down and don't move. And he'll get bored and he'll go on. Well, I've never had a lot of success at that. Those dogs that just leave on their own, those are the dogs I can do something with. Those others, they just don't. They just never did it for me. I'm not saying that there ain't somebody somewhere successful doing that, but I've not experienced that. And I've sat there for 3 hours waiting on it to go. It's not that those dogs won't do something if you put them with a dog, but it's not bred into them. And I think there's the difference. Once again, it depends on the game in your area. If you're hunting in thick game, you don't need a big wide hunting dog. But we need one that will just take him as it comes. Mm-hmm. If he has to go in there a half a mile, well, that's what it takes to win, But there's no right or wrong way to do this. Everybody has got their own ideas, and what works for you is what you need to do. I'm just telling you my experience. You get something that's got that want, and they got to have that. They got to have that want to do that. And there's some that are just naturally, they know where to find game. I've seen that over and over through the years. You'll have a dog that gets struck most of the time. It'll be a first strike dog. There's a reason for that. The dog knows where to go look. And it's not something that you can teach them. It's just something that they learn as they progress on, So
I think this part of the country it's different. When squirrels are here, they're thick and they're here. But the coons have never been thick. And we started off and still have coon hounds and have for 50 years. But when you have to have a dog like that goes in there and gets struck, you have to have that kind of dog to be successful here. It's not that you're not going to tree some coons, but he's got to know where to go find them, and most of the time they're going to be deep. So if you breed that generation after generation, before long, you've got a dog that when you turn them out, the witch dog was a good example. When we started that dog left like immediately. You would have to go find the dog somewhere. And a lot of them that we have are that same way. The downside of that is some of them are junk. Not some, 99% of them are really junky. A lot of people look at that as a big hindrance. Oh my gosh, I'd shut that dog down immediately. We don't operate like that. I'm not saying that we didn't. There was a time when I shut them down real quick. But through the years, I've just kind of learned that I think for me, that takes a little bit of edge off those dogs. Because you're taking a dog that wants to do something so bad. I guess if I was going to describe it, I let one run until it's a danger for him, till it's going to get to the point he's going to get run over, and I have to shut him down, because a lot of them will run, but they'll fall off a tree, and we just try to let them start to slack themselves up as we're giving game to them. And a lot of people you'll hear say, "Oh, I would never do that." And I don't dispute anybody's training methods. I've had a lot of people say I never show a dog game. I can't tell you the coon hounds we've started showing them game. Now you have to watch it. You can't do too much of it. If you show him 10 coons in a cage, first thing he's going to do is come out of the truck and look for the cage. You can't do that. But we've had great success showing dogs game.
I think you need to show a puppy what it is that you're looking for. And like he said, you have to be careful with it because it can create some bad habits. But if you have enough experience to know that, I think that it speeds the process up immensely because especially if you don't have a lot of game, you may walk half the night and not walk that pup over a track. So I think it jump starts them. I also think too that with a puppy, you got to do it. There's a fine line between not enough and too much. You've got to walk that middle. Don't give them no more than they can handle, but give them enough to challenge them, and they'll progress from that point. What happens a lot of times is you get a young dog. You got a dog that's 8 months old and he's running and treeing his own coons or his own squirrels. Well, you just go to hunting the hair off of him, and he burns out. He's no different than you would be. You have to be able to recognize when to push and when to back off, and that's with anything, I think once you understand that, I think from that point you can start to build. And like I say, the ones I've seen that I thought were exceptional, they started off exceptional. As far as running off game, that's not a game breaker for me. Matter of fact, if I got one up in the pen now. When he was 8 months old, he would run a deer till it took water. It had to take water because he wasn't backing off of it, and he just started off that way. I can tell you this: when he runs and trees a coon, it don't take him all night to do it either. Running that deer is a fast track. It's an easy track to run. And it teaches them how to run with their head up. They learn to cut that track. And I think in the end, whether you're hunting coons or squirrels, I think in the end, it just makes for a better competition dog.
Well, it's all about getting treed as many times as you can in that allotted amount of time. That's the game we play, day or night, whether you got a light on your head or not. You still got to have one that makes the most trees and has some game, and that's a huge part of it. Accuracy now is, we talked about this a little bit last night too. I hear people talk about these hounds that are 60%, 70%. That was so different back in the days gone by because we hide hunted, and like we talked about, we'd cut a tree down. We would cut into a den tree because that's how we paid for Christmas or whatever it was. We sold hides. That supplemented everybody's income. So if you had a dog that you walked in there to a den tree and you cut 2 or 3 and there was nothing in there, buddy, he sure wasn't going to last long, and he sure wasn't going to be in your breeding program. So it changed things as far as the accuracy is concerned. Now you're starting to see that come back now on the hounds. There's a lot of super, super accurate hounds. But you got to be able to put that coon up there. And I think that's one of those things that can you help a dog with his tracking ability? I think running off game can help a dog with his tracking ability. But I think you take a dog that's a poor locator. I'm not saying that he won't get somewhat better through experience and exposure, but a dog that can locate that coon or squirrel quick and have him. He does that at a young age. Now, he might get better at his craft, but good starts off good. Like I say, you don't take a dog that's a poor locator and that's just terrible, and then you see this miraculous change in him after you've knocked coons out to him and he speeds up. Good starts off good.
Well, in my mind, it's like on a scale of 1 to 10. If a pup starts off and he's 8. Well, you'll hear people comment, well, but they never get no better. Well, if you start off at an 8 and you can only reach a 10, there's not a lot of room for improvement. So that doesn't mean that he's not a good one. It's just that he wasn't so far down on the scale to begin with. It's always changing. The rules are always changing, but still yet you have to go back to the basics. And that amounts to having a good breeding program. You have to maintain a line of dogs that suits you, however that might be. And as long as you do that, you'll continue to be in the game. As far as he was talking about, like accuracy, those dogs that are good locators, they're born that way. There's a lot of things people try to change, and I've done it. I've did it all I could think of. I mean, I've tried to break dogs from chewing at the tree. I've tried to break dogs from running the tree. Those are genetic traits. Now, I'm not saying that you can't work on them and tweak them some, but you're not going to change them. They are what they are. And it's up to you to bring the best out of them. And when that happens, when fate and preparation come together at the same time, you have success. And you have to prepare that dog for that time when everything falls into place and he wins a world hunt. It takes a lot of commitment on the part of the person working the dog. You have to be willing to be out there when you don't want to be out there.
Well, and I think now you have so many more people that are at that top tier, a top tier handler. There's some of the best handlers that there's ever been. Not that there weren't good ones 30 years ago, there were, but I don't think it was the numbers. When you pull up to any of these big events now, if you did it 6 weeks in a row, there's probably going to be 6 different winners because it is sheer luck. You hardly ever come back and see a scorecard that is a complete blowout where you think, holy cow, old Joe just dominated that cast. Most of them will be old Joe got beat or won by one tree, one circle tree, one plus tree. And what that does is that shows you that everybody there is at that same level. So you've got to do something that you think gives you that little bit of an edge with that dog in your preparation process. Because everybody's there. You know, when you got these entry fees of $300, $600, $1,000, sometimes $6,000 in these higher end pro hunts, when you got somebody laying down that kind of money, they've got confidence in what they're doing. And the handler, the dog, and everyone there's in that same role. You know, they're all capable of doing it. So I think that's the good thing about where we're at now. When you pull up, it's anybody's game. 25 years ago, you could pull up, and I don't care if there was 100 dogs at a squirrel hunt. I could about walk through there and tell you who was going to be in that final cast if they would get down to an elimination style hunt. It's not like that now. So that speaks volumes for what people have done as far as breeding is concerned.
I think of this too. I've always been one to breed not just for ability, but for conformation. The better equipped an animal is to do its job, the more apt it is to be able to do its job. So when I look at a litter of puppies, I already know their genetic background. So I've got an idea of what to expect. Now, can I look at a litter of puppies and pick out the best one? No, and I don't think most people can. But I look at that litter of puppies, and I'm looking for the one that I like the best, the one I think is the prettiest, because that's the one I'm going to give most of my attention to. And like I said, you've already done your background research. So all you can do then is try to pick the best looking, healthiest puppy that suits you, and go from that point. You know, and I've been successful doing that. I'm not necessarily looking for that puppy that runs up and grabs my pant leg and goes to jerking on it. I'm not looking for that puppy that's shy. I'm out when it comes to shy. But that one that's in between, that one that acts like he's interested in what's going on, that's probably the puppy I'm going to take if he suits me the way he looks.
I tell you, I think a big part of that is going back. If you go back 25 years in these Walker dogs, when I was a kid, he was a master hound, spent show judge, president of a coon club. So everybody we were around was competition coon hunters. And back then, if you had a Grand Night hound, he needed to be a Grand Show dog too. And I hear people say, I don't care what one looks like. Well, everybody likes pretty. There's nobody that says, well, give me the ugly one. Everybody likes pretty. Now, there's some of these ones that are rougher looking we can live with. But if I had my druthers, I want a pretty one. And I think it's kind of followed along. You'll see a lot of our dogs standing up or showing those dogs because that's part of our routine. That's just something that we do daily with those dogs. And coming from that era, that was important to have that. We would show that dog before we would hunt that dog. So the dogs that we bred were normally a pretty decent looking dog. That's real important to me. I want one that I think that doesn't hurt my eyes when I go out there to feed it. So you try to breed for that. And they've had pretty good luck with it. Now they've gotten away from it in the hound side, breeding for a different kind of dog. But you go back 25 years ago, if you had a dual grand dog, when you'd go to these hunts, there might be 20 dogs in the male category, Walker dogs, that were there that were nice, high-end Walker dogs, that were coon dogs too. So it may not be important to somebody at all, but I like one that's pretty easy on the eyes.
Mm-hmm. Well, don't think that because a dog is bred to look the way he does that he can't perform, because the two can be combined. There's some breeds that have moved in a show direction, and the breed has suffered as a result. But I guarantee you this: if I've got one, it's not going to be bad looking. Somebody else will own that one.
It's just as easy to feed one that's pretty as it is.
Yeah, it don't cost anymore. We kind of keep going back to the idea of good puppies make great dogs. And so whenever you guys have a litter, you talked about like taking them, pulling them, and seeing how they react to that. Is there anything else you guys do? Do you ever lay like a little drag just to see what they do? Hide their food somewhere, take them for walks? Or
I might take little bitty puppies when they just get to the point that they're starting to eat good. Mm-hmm. I may take those pups, and a lot of times I'll do it away from their kennel. I'll pick them all up, pack them all out there where the grass is mowed somewhere, and I'll start to watch them dogs and see which ones start to make it back to the house. Which ones are doing this or are doing something different. But then I may take a handful of food and make them pups look around for that. Take one that barks up. A lot of dogs are vocal. And you'll hear people say, oh, that doesn't make any difference at all. To me, it does. If that dog wants to bark up, he's easier to make bark up, right? Mm-hmm. And if he does, you're going to pay more attention to him. Like he said earlier, if you've got one that starts early, you want to come home from work after you've worked 10 hours and you're tired. You want to take old Joe out and cut him loose because he's a nice puppy. If you've got one that's not doing nothing, you can't squeeze a bark out of him, probably not as apt to try to put in the extra effort. But I think as far as those little puppies are concerned, I try to make a lot of noise around them. I try to shoot around them if I can. I live in a subdivision, so, it's not like I can shoot a cannon there. But we try to take those puppies. We may put those pups in the truck and start hauling them. I may haul them up here, a little distance, drop them off up here, move those puppies around, just to see which one you think's going to have that ability to get in that box and rest, not just spin circles and throw the awfulest fit you've ever seen. Those are the things that I'm looking for in one. And then as that pup starts to, when you get to the point you can take him to the woods, by that time, we've done about made a decision on what we're thinking that pup should be capable of doing by then. Then the expectation thing kicks in. You expect him to, his daddy did this, his grandpa did this at 7 months old. He's probably going to do that at 7 months old if you put him in that same environment. Now, I've had a lot of people talk about game. The ability to have a lot of game dictates how we start a dog. You're here now and you got to hunt with us this morning, and squirrels are super, super thin here. It's not the best time to start a young dog. So you have to take and tailor your process, because you're not going to be able to. I'll use Witch, for example. When she was a puppy, he took her and walked her down the ridge road the first time she'd ever been out. The dog tried to tree her a squirrel because they're crossing everywhere. If you can set that situation up, well, your success is going to be way better than like today, when a dog's on the ground for 10 minutes before it trees. So you have to watch what you're doing, what your game situation's like, and tailor your process to that. But I think as far as them little puppies, exposure.
Well, I think at the very beginning, you need to start, when you feed, you need to expose them to noise. Take your feed bowl and bang your feed bowl. They'll get used to that. What happens a lot of times is somebody buys a puppy, they take it home, they put it in the pen, and all they do is feed it. And then when it gets old enough, they think that they can take it somewhere and try to hunt it. Well, now it's got all these issues. Shooting a gun. I mean, think about it. If the first time that you shoot a gun, you shoot a 12 gauge over a dog, there's a good chance it's going to startle the dog. Some of them it's going to ruin, So you need to start off with something less in the beginning. Start off with a pellet gun around the kennel, work to a 22 if you can. We all don't live in a situation where we can turn our puppies loose and let them run till they're 6 months old. I wished I did. Because those puppies, at that point, they're already used to being out. They cross creeks, they cross fences, they know all that. This dog that's been in this kennel, he don't know none of that. So he has to learn all that, I will say this, the line of dogs that we hunt and breed, they're not the kind of dogs as puppies that you want to take to the city park. Because they're going to go through there like...
They're going to get themselves in trouble.
Yeah.
They're going to get themselves in trouble. There are different line of dogs, and we talked about it today. Our country is set up to hold these kind of dogs. They're not for everybody. They're not for everybody's part of the country because they hunt so wide. You've seen that dog cover miles of ground today. You can't do that in a lot of places. We're really blessed in the spot that we live. When you take a puppy these dogs will run a deer like at 5 months old and run it to try to catch it, So you pick that dog up miles away. So you got to be real careful where you drop him. But there again, we expect it. We kind of know what to look for in them. I'll say one thing about these puppies. I've had a lot of people say, well, what's the one thing that holds true with every puppy? The one thing that holds true is there ain't none of them the same. The way that you start one today, you may use that same process. I may use something that I saw him do or some other dog people do 20 years ago. I may use some basics to that. But I think that every puppy's different. You got to watch that puppy, watch the pressure it can take, and tailor your process with that. There are some of these dogs that are so bold, you can just push and push and push. I love those kind. Those are the right kind. But there are also other ones that may be more advanced than that. But you got to watch how you deliver that information to them. So there's nothing. I don't think there's anything that holds true. There's no cookie cutter way to do this with these puppies. If there was, we'd revolutionize it and we'd be millionaires. But it's not. It doesn't work that way.
Ideally, I would like a dog that, like I say, that's balanced. It just so happens these dogs that we have, they run off game real hard when they're young. Is that something that I breed for? No. If I could breed that out and not sacrifice what comes with it, I certainly would not want that. but I've not figured out a way to do that. If you want this type of dog, this comes with it. This is the price you pay. Now, when they break, and they're done. But it can be trying at times. I just feel like that if people will start off, do your homework. Research the dog that you're thinking about buying. And that being said, let's say that there's a litter of puppies and the guy wants $500 a pup for, but you think you can only afford a $300 pup. My advice is save your money till you can buy that $500 pup, because you have to have something to start with. And I'm not saying that all, $1,000 puppy don't make a good dog necessarily. I just have found through 50 years of this is that the really nice dogs, first of all, don't come available very often. Most of the time they're placed. They're not for sale. But if you do find somebody that you're interested in their dogs, don't let the money be your deciding factor. Wait until you can go get that better bred puppy.
I think that's what happens a lot too with puppies. You take even a puppy that's $1,000, and I can remember when pups went from $150 to $200, and people said there'll be no way anybody will ever do that. But I think even if you take a puppy that's $750 or $1,000, most people can afford that puppy. So they assume that if I buy this puppy, he's going to be leaps and bounds ahead. All I got to do is get him out at 8 months old, and he'll perform better than this other puppy. Well, you still got to lay that groundwork with him. And now, like I said so many times during this interview, pups and breeding are way better than they've ever been. But you still got to set him up for success. And I think that's why you see so many of these puppies that get to that 7-month, 8-month-old age group where they're starting to do something, and you see them come for sale. Because people have exposed what they didn't do as a handler to get that pup ready. You never go to look at a 9-month-old pup that somebody's wanting to resell, and you think that dude is on fire. He wouldn't be for sale if he was. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of those dogs. We talked about this today. There's a lot of times that those dogs can be bought at that crucial age and put them in the right spot, and they go ahead and excel. But I think for the most part, people generally, they can afford a puppy, but they can't start a puppy. And I don't mean that in any way disrespectful to anybody, because Lord knows there was times when we couldn't have afforded a $150 puppy. We had to breed and raise and train whatever we could. It's not the money thing. That's not it. It's the ability to train that puppy, the want to train that puppy. I think that is still the good thing about this thing. I've heard people say, well, this sport's getting priced out where the common man can't do it. I think there's nothing further from the truth as far as I'm concerned. Yes, nice dogs are high, but you can still go buy a puppy and put those miles in. You can still do it the same way that we had to do it 40 years ago, if you want to do that. Or you can jump ahead and go put your $30,000 and go haul him somewhere and win a hunt next week.
That's not to say that you hear them refer to the dog behind the barn. That's not to say that there aren't good dogs out there that nobody knows anything about. I guarantee you there is. If you're looking for a puppy, if I were looking for a puppy, and money was an issue, I would try to then search out somebody as close to me as possible that hunts hard, because your chances of getting a usable dog would be greatly increased. And there's still people that do that. I think it makes it easier if you've got the money to go get certain lines of dogs, but that's not the only way. You can still do it if you if you find somebody that hunts hard and hunts the type of dog that you're looking for, you know. One of the years ago, I was hunting a dog that hunted all over the country, a dual Grand Night dog, and he won his share of hunts. I went hunting with a farmer, had a half red bone, half Walker dog laying on the front porch. The guy said, "Do you mind if I take Red?" I didn't care if he took Red. Well, when the hunt was over that night, I'll say this, Red treated as many coons as the dog that I had, and the one I had sold for big money. So there's a good example of a dog behind the barn situation, you know.
I think it has changed now with social media. You know, back in days gone by, you didn't have this. If you didn't look in coonhound bloodlines or full cry or cooner, you didn't see these dogs or call them on the phone. Now with social media like it is, unless it's just hid, there'll be somebody that will, especially a higher end dog, because there's so much money in the turnover of these dogs. You know, there's people that specialize in buying a hot shot young dog for $5,000, tuning on him and selling him for $40,000. It's a business now. You know, and I think that there are people that do just that. We've had a lot of people we've hunted with through the years that were not puppy men. They would spend the money, go buy nice dogs, and they kept really nice high-end dogs. But that wasn't, they weren't interested in the puppy side of it. For us, I'm looking to have a dog that's born in my kennel that I can raise and train and win with, you know, and go full circle. That's where it's at for me now. And like he said earlier, I don't want to paint a picture like that. We raise a lot of puppies, because we sure don't. We raise very few litters of puppies. But I think that our greatest success has come from dogs we've raised. I can look back on a handful of dogs that I bought that were even started. Most of the time we had to raise those puppies. So you get experience and exposure. You know, and I look back on, I had a guy that was probably one of the best dog men that I've ever been around. We were standing looking at a litter of pups, and the guy said, which one of them is going to be the best pup? He said, "I'll tell you what, part, it'll be the one that gets hunted the most." There's no truer statement ever been said. You know, that pup that gets that ride to the woods, that gets the opportunity, is going to prevail.
You know, on these puppies, I just sit thinking to myself, I'm probably not, I don't fall into the normal category. I don't, it's not that I don't pet a dog, but I don't pet a dog a lot. I never did. I mean, I take good care of them. I try to get the most I can out of them. When they deserve petted, I pet them. But I don't create this relationship. I try not to create this relationship where that dog doesn't want to get away from me. And once again, this is just these are just thoughts, you know, and go through my mind. Do we sometimes create our own problems? You know, because we take the puppy and we take the puppy and we just walk off in the woods with the puppy, and we always walk the puppy. Well, the puppy thinks of you as part of the pack. He don't think of you as a person. Mm-hmm. Hey, you're just a dog in the pack, and you're just a dominant dog. Well, they want to pack by nature. So you're asking him to do something that goes against the grain to begin with by expecting him to leave you, because he wants to hunt with you, you know. And this isn't like I've got this all figured out. I'm just saying these are just thoughts. Because, like I said, I've not had a lot of luck with taking one out there and sitting down on a log, you know. You have to breed for these characteristics. And then all of a sudden, these things ain't even a factor, you know.
If you got one that wants to bust that woods open, you're ahead of the game. Because I think, just like he said, we take, and I've been guilty of the same thing. You take a litter of pups and you think, well, I'll take them to the park. I'll let them guys walk around, or I'll take them to the woods and let them walk around. So you make a game out of that. That's what that pup expects. I'll just walk with the boss here, and That's what we do. Well, then you get angry because he won't go hunting, later on. I've tried to change some things up there. Now if a dog comes back and checks in, I'm putting him in the box. If that's if that's the stage of the game we're at. Yet again, it don't go with every dog every time. But put them back in the box. Move, let them reset. A big part of it is, too, here, not having game changes the way you operate. If every place you go, there's a coon or a squirrel 50 yards in there, well, your recutting is not going to be a big issue because a dog knows he's going to hit a track right there. It's different here. So you have to tailor your training methods to that.
When I was young, I pushed hard, and I wasn't experienced enough to know when to stop. In my mind, it was like if we just push harder, we'll get better, irregardless of what the situation was. As the years passed, and I'm a slow learner. It took me a long time to realize that that's not the only way. You take a dog that won't hunt and you run him off, and and people say, well, you didn't really run him off. He's hiding from you. Probably in 95% of the situations, that's true. That other 5%, he's gone. I've had them to where that they were so afraid that you'd pick them up, 4 or 5 miles down the road on somebody's front porch. I ain't saying that it can't be done, but those are man-made dogs, and I don't think those dogs ever reach their full potential because they're under such psychological pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he can't give you 110% because he's worried to death about what you're going to do to him. Mm-hmm. And back in days gone by before these Garmins, take that Garmin now, take one you think you've run off, take him out there at night and turn that light on where you can see where he's at and watch. You'll be astonished. Now, there are those few that leave the country. But when you do that, in my opinion, and I've done it, Lord knows we've screwed up a pile of them trying to come up with a method. But I think it's counterproductive because you got that dog running and hiding, and he's not hunting anymore. He doesn't understand that. He doesn't think, oh, man, I needed to be 500 yards in there, not 5 feet from him. That's why he's mad. You have to walk that fine line between having him too close and having him too far. And I was probably the world's worst for running one off. I mean, I would make him leave you. But you didn't realize it then like you do with these Garmins. Like he said, I'm pushing 50 years old, and I'm still learning. I'm probably learning more about a dog now than I ever have. And I think a big part of it is I'm open-minded enough now to see I might have screwed some things up. What I thought was right may have not been right. So I think we spend a lot of time talking about dogs and breeding, and it's an obsession for us. So we're always trying to look for something to make it better. But the training part of it, if you can't look to yourself and say, man, I could have screwed that. I did that. I screwed that one up. And not do that again, well, you're not going to advance very much in this. Because I've made way more mistakes and failures than I have successes, until you start to put together what you think works for you.
It seems like you've got to be very intentional. The more I try to train, you have to be very, very intentional. You have to put a lot of thought into what a dog's thinking, what's going through the dog's mind, or you're going to screw them. I've messed up so many dogs. Many dogs.
Because in your mind, you think that this should work this way. If I do A, I should get B as a result. And it probably is not going to work like that. And the biggest thing is, a lot of times we do this stuff when we're aggravated at them. When we're mad at them, we've got our buddies out there. Old Joe's not doing what he's supposed to do. You're aggravated, so you do something that you probably wouldn't have done in normal circumstances. You burn him down or you run him off. Well, then you've just added fuel to that fire,
The dog doesn't want to intentionally make you mad. You just get frustrated and become mad. And I will tell you this, when you're pressing that button to shock that dog and you're pressing it hard, you don't need to be pressing that button.
Yeah.
Because you're not using good sense. Like I said, the dog doesn't set out to
ruin your day.
To ruin
Yeah.
it, you know. There's just a lot of different times when we don't make the right decision. I heard somebody say one time something about something to the effect like, I don't. It was a harsh. This was a harsh situation, but the woman said to the guy, "I understand that you fix bad horses," and his reply was, "No, I help horses fix bad people." You know, so we bring a lot of these problems upon ourselves with the way we handle these situations. And it's an ever-evolving situation. There's no one person knows it all. There's no one way to do this, you know. But if you're fortunate enough to get around someone from time to time that you can learn something from, you got to be open-minded about this to be successful on any kind of a larger scale.
Well, I don't think if you've never saw somebody work, change, manipulate a situation with a dog to get those results, if you've never seen somebody do that in a successful manner that sticks in your mind, you don't know how to put that in your toolbox. These dogs are like they're like building a house, and you better have a bunch of tools in your toolbox to get them to their highest potential.
Well, very seldom do I ever see a dog that I think checks all the boxes. There's dogs that people have bred to walk hunt. There's dogs that people have bred to cast from the tailgate of their truck. Very seldom do you see a dog that just naturally covers all those boxes. And usually those are the ones that you hear about because those are the ones that go on and win big hunts, you know. I guess probably the best advice I could pass on to someone is try and create, once again, a balanced hound or squirrel dog. Try to set that dog up to where that maybe this time you do cast him from a tailgate. You do send him up the ditch line, you know, or up the fence row or whatever. The next time, try to take him somewhere where it's different. You know, try to put him on the water. A dog that's never been on the water is not going to perform when you take him to the water. Try to expose him to agriculture if that's available in your area. Teach that dog how to go across that big wide open field to that fence row over there, because that's where the game's going to be. These are all just common sense things that I think people just don't think about a lot. But if along the way as that puppy's growing, if you expose him to all these different situations, he's going to be more equipped when it comes time to perform.
You know, and I think a big thing too with these puppies is go look at them, go hunt. Now things have changed so much. You can get with a lot of people and go hunt with these dogs, whether it be at a hunt or somewhere. You can set something up and go look at these dogs and see if that's what you truly want. Because I think a lot of times people think that's what I want. Then when they get that, they're so let down because they don't want a dog that blows in there 1,000 yards to get treed. It may sound good to them initially, but they see that that's not, they don't have the spot for that or the want to hunt a dog like that. Where if you did a little more homework, you'd see, you know, that what you're getting out of your breeding. You know, if you cross two dogs that blow in the country and do that, they're probably going to get a pup that does that. So spend your time to do some homework on it.
You know, and that takes us back to what we was talking about earlier. That blowing through the country, don't confuse that with a dog that's looking for game. A dog that blows through the country and is not looking for game, he's useless to me. A dog that has to come across a track, you know, he just meandering through the woods until he comes across a track, he's no good to me. I want one that leaves me looking for what we're looking for, what we're after. And like I said, if he can do that 100 yards, that's fantastic. If it takes him 1,000, that's fine too. But I don't want that one that's just blowing through the country.
I think sometimes, you take a dog, you hear people talk about a dog that's got ground speed and a dog that gets deep. To me, those are two completely different things. Ground speed to me is a dog tree to tree, has got that hustle. They recut good. They're fast on their feet. They're always pushed as hard as they can. A lot of times you'll have a dog that'll get treed in there 700 or 800 yards, and people mistake that with the same thing, and they're not. There's a lot of dogs that just amble out, but they just get deep through there. That's different. I'm looking for a dog that's got ground speed. I'm trying to breed dogs that have ground speed, tree to tree ground speed. Not that necessarily that dog's blowing in there 1,000 yards every time. I would, if he'd go in there and tree 150 yards, but he does it like he's been shot out of a rocket, that's the one I'm looking for. Mm-hmm.
If you're hunting around Richmond, Ohio, with a game stick, a dog that just blows through the country, he's no good to you. He could have treed game around you. Now, if you live where we live, you're probably going to be more successful with a dog that goes in there deep. Like I said, the important thing to me is they're looking for game. And then the rest of it just kind of follows.
I think the biggest thing is, though, and you've heard us say it several times, we're big advocates of an early starting dog. We want a breeding program that produces early starting dogs, because it's not been my experience any other way other than great dogs start off as great puppies. It's been like that. We've had great success with that. You watch that pup. Make sure you don't put too much pressure on that pup, but great starts off as great. I think that's it.
When you breed a litter of puppies, what I consider to be successful breeding is when those dogs all turn out to be usable dogs. You're hoping for that one special dog in that litter, but if those dogs don't, percentage-wise, all make usable dogs, then your breeding program wasn't successful. You need to look in a different direction. And he was talking about the female side of that. When it comes to the breeding, I think that the female makes a difference because of the fact that she can pass on the mitochondria gene, which is it's passed on to both male and female, but the male can't pass it on. Only the female side can. So there, I think, in lies what people have not understood, but have noticed when you talk to somebody and they'll say, well, I think the female adds 75% to this. Well, genetically, they're only capable of both of them contributing 50%, except for the fact that she does pass that on. And that is like the motor in each gene. Okay, that's what fires that gene. And so I think there is where that it ties into the female side. As far as competition, I'm old school, but I still think that the best female dog can't beat the best male dog. If they're both equal, he's got to be stronger, because he's the male version. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a gazillion people who won't agree with that. I'm just telling you my opinion.
Well, and we talked about it today. I'm completely the opposite of that, and I think that's why our training methods work so good, because we're willing to try different things. I'm completely different than that. I like a female dog. I like pushing a female dog. I think for me, it gives me a slight edge, and I think any time that you can go in there with that slight edge, you're looking at that different on the competition side. I think a female, for me, the percentages are better for me on the female side, packing a female dog, time after time, hunt after hunt. Now, there's male dogs out there that are super, and I understand that dog should be able to outperform as far as strength is concerned. But I think for me, if I look at all the variables, The way the dog comes out, the way he leaves, the way she leaves, the difference in checking things out when they hit a different spot. For me, it always leans towards a female dog. If hardly ever will you see me packing a male dog. I'm completely different about it. I think it gives me an edge that way.
Well, if I was going to lean in that direction, I would say a female dog overall is more consistent. I just still think, though, that if everything's level, I still think that he's going to be the stronger dog. And I've always done well with a male dog. And I think part of that is because they can take more pressure. And like I said, I'm not one to like overly love on my dog, They got a job to do, and I expect them to do that. I guess if you compare that to children, it's not likely you can be as hard on your daughter as you can on your son. They're just wired different, There's difference.
And I think that's the good thing about us. We train, well, when you pulled up here, I told you that I've got one of his young dogs down in my kennel. We move dogs around to expose them to different things, everything's different about them, trying to see the pressure that they can take. But for me, like I say, I like packing a female. I like the option of being able to breed that female. But I think it gives me a little bit of an edge when I come up there as versus packing a male dog. And I think if you've got anything psychologically that you think gives you an edge, you're ahead of the pack. Then you're not worried about somebody else's wheels falling off for you to win that cast. When you get to the point that you think that you've got a dog that's competitive enough that you don't have to have somebody else's failures to win, it makes its own success. That's when you've got what I would consider a finished competition style dog. You're not going to win everything that you draw out with because dogs are still too good. Luck prevails in a lot of these things. But when you've got one that you're confident, like we just said, if you drop one in South Arkansas in the water, and then you haul him to Ohio and you cut him across a 400-acre cornfield, and you're winning cast in both places,
you got a balanced dog.
You got a balanced dog.
Yeah,
you got a balanced dog.
I'm always scrutinizing. I don't care how good I think he is. I'm always looking for what's his hole. Where's his weakness lie? Because that's where I want to try to improve upon. First of all, they got to give you everything they've got. A dog that's a sometime dog, he's not going to win for you. Oh, he may have if the stars line up, but he's not going to win for you. And they gotta have that want, which we refer to as heart. They gotta have that heart, and then they gotta have the tools to go along with that. It's a situation to where that, like I said earlier, you have to be able to read between the lines. You look for the subtle things. A lot of times, it's not something that just sticks out obvious. It'll be some little subtle something or other, That I think there's a difference in a guy who can train a dog, and a guy who's hunting a dog. And I do believe this. I think you're born with that. I think I can try to teach it to somebody, but if they don't have that innate ability to see what I see, they're not going to get it. I had a good friend who, he was both our friends. The guy was a horse trainer. That's what he did for a living, and was very successful at it. And we've had a lot of horses through the years. He could read a horse better than I could, and that made all the difference.
It allows you to redirect that. The dog is the same way. It allows you to redirect some bad behavior as you see it starting to present itself, and he would do the same thing with a horse, where I would let that go ahead escalate till it became something where the horse had blowed up or was bucking or whatever he was doing, he would read that and then redirect that horse, you know. And I was always in awe over that, you know. And I think the dogs are the same way. We just see them different. Because, I mean, I'll watch a dog and see things and think, oh, I need to do this immediately. You have to have that ability to be able to see that, or you push him to the point where he goes backwards, or you don't push him to the point where he can excel. You know, it's that fine line.
Well, I think too that we're talking about dogs that we consider competition dogs. Everybody doesn't want the same thing in a squirrel dog, you know, and I understand it. If you want to take the kids and go squirrel hunting and enjoy it, go get you a different kind of dog. It ain't this one.
We talked about that this morning. We were about the time we were coming up out of that big hill, back up that big hill, and it's like, yeah, it might not be for everybody.
It's not. It's not. You have to. You know, I've had people say, "Well, that's not a pleasure dog." That's what I derive the biggest amount of pleasure from. Mm-hmm. When you cut that dog and it leaves and it blows in there and comes treed. You know, I don't want it blowing past game, but when it does that, I'm walking back with a smile on my face. I'm successful at that point. And for somebody else, it may not be. Their success may be a tailgate full of squirrels with a dog that you never have to put a lead on, that handles. You know, I don't care where he's at. I want to get in there and put a lead on him, handle him, and bring him out. He's done his job, and I'm going to get in there and do mine. But for other people, that's not the kind of dog they want. They want a dog that they can handle without having a leash on. And those dogs are nice for them, invaluable, you know, for some of those people.
I do think you can take some of the methods that we've discussed, and I think you can apply them to any type of dog that you prefer to hunt. You know, I mean, you can do it. You could do a lot of these things with a full mountain cur or a feist or a shepherd, whatever it is you choose to hunt. Some of this stuff is more exclusive to a hound type of a dog, but everything's not. And just see what you can use in your situation. You know, what makes you happy, because in the end, that's all that counts. Is what makes you happy. Mm-hmm. You know. Yeah. What makes you proud to go to say that's my dog?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as long as you enjoy him, that's the biggest part of it. You know, when you get on these, like he said, we base most of our training around a hound. We do. I mean, because that's what we've had the most of, and had the most experience with. So if you've had a bunch of them and you've had success and failure, well, you can use those numbers. But they are more what I would consider competition hounds. But it's got to where now that the squirrel dog competition mirrors the competition hounds so close. They're almost the same thing.
You know, it makes me think of a friend of mine who's passed away a long time ago now. They were in a UKC coon hunt. After the cast was over, one of the guys in the cast said, "Hey, Butch," he said, "what do you think of my dog?" And Butch said, "Oh, Party," he said, "I really don't have an opinion." Mm-hmm. He said, "Oh, no." He said, "I'm serious." He said, I respect your opinion." He said, "What do you think of my dog?" He stopped and he paused for a second. He said, "Pard, if I had to hunt that," he said, "I'd go buy a fishing pole." But everybody, like I said, everybody likes something different, and whatever suits you is what you need to strive for. You know, if this is something that you're interested in, this competition end of it, I mean, go for it. Like I said earlier, my advice is do your homework. There's a lot of people trying to sell dogs. There's not a lot of people who got good dogs. So just save your money, take your time, and hopefully you'll end up with what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, we've gone a little bit over my normal time slot. We're pushing up on not quite 2 hours, but working our way towards it. That being said, is there anything you guys want to talk about
No.
in closing?
I appreciate you coming down and hunting with us. You kind of got to see what we do, how we do it, which really adds to it. So you get to see the dogs we got. But I say every time when we're asked to do these podcasts, I'm really humbled, that people ask us to do these things. I think that these podcasts are great because it's archived. At some point my grandchildren may listen to this, but I think that we truly appreciate you wanting us to do this, because we do this. We would do this whether there was a podcast or a competition hunt, whether there was any of that stuff. We're still going to be hunting a dog tomorrow morning for the love of the dog, for the obsession that we talk about with this thing. So, we appreciate it. Like I told you so many times here, we've met some great people through these dogs. Dad's going to be 70 years old. I'll be 50 years old. So that's a lot of dogs and nights hunted. We've met some great people through it, and look to meet that many more. I say it on every one of these things. You see a lot of Facebook stuff where people are asking questions and advice. I don't never get in on none of that. There's 10 million Facebook experts. But if anybody's got any questions we can help them with, we try to help anybody we can. I just don't. We don't do it on that Facebook public forum because, like I say, there's plenty of experts to take care of that. But we'll help anybody we can, and we appreciate you coming and taking the time to do this. Glad to have you.
Well, hopefully, if you guys have me, maybe we'll try to do this again before too long.
Yeah,
Sure.
We need to do it when it's not 100 degrees. If you enjoyed it then, you'll really enjoy it in the fall.
Yeah. If we could if we could cool it off a little bit to where I didn't sweat quite so much.
Yes.
And I did only find one tick on me today, though, so that was nice.
Well, the good thing was we put you in all that flat country.
Yeah, it was nice and flat.
Well, now I can introduce you to some tick spray. You won't get no ticks. I don't know if you're going to get anything else.
But
Don't breathe.
We sure appreciate it, though. Like I say, we're honored to be asked to do this, both of us. We've sure made a life out of chasing these dogs, and enjoyed every bit of it. So if we can help anybody else out along the way, feel free to give us a call.
Yep, that pretty well wraps it up. Stay in the woods.
Yep.
That's it. Yep.
All right, everybody. Take care and keep wearing out that boot leather. I just want to give everyone that's listening a sincere thank you. Getting this podcast going has been a project. I really hope you're enjoying it, and if you don't mind, give the show a good rating and review wherever you're listening to it at, or share it on your social media to help get some traction. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to your feedback.